I'm Jerry Hafer. I represent AMAC and the AMAC Foundation. Are any of you AMAC members? I'm just curious. Excellent. Those of you that are not, there is information out on the table. Help yourself to it. Could tell you all about AMAC, who we are. AMAC is the Association of Mature American Citizens. We are the conservative alternative. I won't say to who. We're the conservative alternative, and we'll leave it at that. AMAC is relatively new. It was formed in 2007. And since that time has been extremely active in Washington advocating on issues important to seniors, Social Security reform, healthcare reform, and a host of retirement issues. Our main thrust right now are healthcare reform and Social Security reform. Social Security, as you probably read in the press, is facing some major issues in the next couple of years. In fact, it's facing insolvency by 2034. And we just can't seem to get congressional action, congressional attention to fix that problem. We have a solution crafted that has been actuarially verified that will resolve the Social Security insolvency problem with just some minor adjustments and with no tax increases, which is very important. So we're hopeful that after the midterm elections are done and in that window of time between midterms and the next presidential election, we can get some attention to this problem and get it resolved. But our representatives are active in Washington constantly. Our president is up there very frequently, going from congressional office to congressional office and explaining to them our position on these issues. And we are getting attention, we are getting traction. We have 1.4 million members now, so we're no longer a startup organization. And I'm optimistic that we'll be able to get some resolution on these critical issues. But that's what AMAC does. AMAC is the organization that supports America's seniors. We take direction from our members. We poll our members regularly, and we take direction on the issues that we undertake on behalf of seniors. We get opinions from our members and act on them. So that's AMAC. The AMAC Foundation, which I represent directly, is relatively new also. We were formed in 2014, was our first full year. So we're really only in our 5th year of operation. And our mission is to educate and support America's seniors. And we do that many different ways. I'd like to show you a very brief video. Kind of a marketing kind of video, but it's a good, brief explanation of who the foundation is and what we do.
One of the many areas AMAC has dedicated itself to is the information needs for older Americans. The AMAC Foundation was formed in 2013 to provide seniors with guidance through the retirement years and providing valuable free services. Among these services are seminars and workshops on topics of interest to seniors, and a Social Security Advisory Service. The AMAC Foundation hosted a major healthcare symposium in Washington, published a 138-page handbook on America's Social Security system, and staffed a devoted team of certified advisors to answer any questions regarding Social Security. The AMAC Foundation's online presence is robust, with a dedicated website that provides event schedules, articles, and resources for seniors. The Foundation also maintains 2 information patent applicable websites, one for Social Security and the other for healthcare issues, including Medicaid. As mentioned earlier, the AMAC Foundation provides all of its services for free. It operates on contributions from AMAC members and the public. Making a contribution through the Foundation's website is quick and easy. Please consider donating to support the enrichment of American seniors' lives. With dynamic plans for future programs, the AMAC Foundation is working to bring more value to the constituency that benefits most from these services.
So that's who the AMAC Foundation is. The video talked about some of the services we provide, the publications that we've done, and one of the primary services that we operate is called the Social Security Advisory Service. If you know of anybody that has any questions about Social Security, We have 5. The video said 4, but we just added a 5th trained and certified advisor to handle questions. Unfortunately, there really isn't any place people can go to get answers to personal questions about Social Security. The Social Security Administration offices, I'm not knocking them, but they are not staffed nor trained to answer detailed questions. And so we provide that service to the public free of charge. All you need to do is call us or email us, and we will investigate the question and get back to you with a credible answer. And we handle about 300 inquiries a month, so it's become a very popular service. The other thing that we do is seminars like this. We conduct on average, about 2 seminars a month on topics of interest to seniors. And at the end of this session, we will give you an evaluation sheet and ask for any suggestions that you may have of topics that you would like to see us present in seminar fashion like this. As I said, on average, about 2 seminars a month of a range of topics, from Social Security basics to Medicare issues to even technical issues. We do a very popular session called Cutting the Cord, Life After Cable, Getting Rid of Your Cable Company. And that's become very popular. We've done that 6 times now, and each time we do it, it's a full house. There's usually around 90 people that attend that session. So that's a very, very popular one. Not sure what that says about cable companies, but it is very popular. And another one we've done 13 sessions now. We're in the middle of the 13th session on a session titled, it's a 3-part session, 2 hours stretched over 3 weeks. And it's called Sudden Death, Are You Prepared? And it's about making sure that you have all your information updated and current and in a place where your next of kin can get at it, that kind of thing. And it's become very popular. It's always full. The day we announce it, it's full. So we have a backlog, but it's very popular. Like I said, we've done the 12 now, and we're in the middle of the 13th. All of this information is on our website, amacfoundation.org, and there's an events page that presents all the seminars that we have coming up, and just visit that from time to time, and you can see the sessions that we have lined up. And if you go to that website, on the home page at the bottom, there's a subscribe button. You can subscribe to our newsletter. We have a monthly newsletter that is a little bit of a preview of what's coming up at the foundation. So feel free to sign up for that, and you'll get on the list for our monthly newsletter. And that's the end of my advertisement. And so what I'd like to do now is introduce today's topic. It's federal benefits for veterans. And I'd like to specifically introduce our speaker, Thomas Spencer. We are fortunate today to have with us this gentleman, very highly qualified. Thomas is the Veterans Liaison for VITAS Healthcare, and he serves veteran communities within Lake and Sumter counties by being a conduit linking them to the benefits and services available from both state and federal sources. He is a highly decorated veteran of multiple foreign combat theaters. After his retirement from the U.S. Army, he served as liaison for elected members of both the U.S. House of Representatives and the Senate. He has also worked for the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, and he was there for a decade, so he has a lot of experience on these benefits, and as he says, some of the tricks to overcoming the anxiety of veteran living. With that, I would like to present to you G. Thomas Spencer, our speaker for today. Thank you.
There we go. One of the things that I always like to make people aware of with regard, especially to Veterans Affairs, is it exists for the purpose of serving veterans. One of the things that gets in the way of Veterans Affairs serving veterans, and I'm certain that you've experienced it because I know that I have, is the intense bureaucracy that you run into and the difficulties that they present to you as soon as you get there. That can be an extreme headache. Some of the times that causes a lot of people to simply not even want to make use of the services that they provide simply because it seems a virtual impossibility to get to them. One of the manuals that they send out every year, this one that I have the picture of is from 2012, but they redo them each year. And the irony to it is they do add new benefits to that gigantic manual. Now, see, one of the things that's interesting about the federal benefits for veterans, they don't mail them out. You have to go to Veterans Affairs and ask for one, or go to the website to download it. But and one of the things that I love to tell people, especially when I worked at Veterans Affairs, if you have benefits that you don't know about, you don't have benefits. The absence of knowledge is the biggest anchor to keep you away from them. And Veterans Affairs, any entity or organization that creates what I consider a labyrinth to get to what I consider the golden prize is keeping you away from that which you have earned. As you know, my name is Thomas Spencer. I'm retired from the United States Army. And after retiring from the Army, I did get the opportunity to serve in Washington for my representatives. The irony to it is I did not vote for either one of the congressperson or the senator. It just so happened that it had to be from the state that you served, that you were from, that you had to go and serve. However, what I learned there while serving is why things move so slow in Washington. I also learned why when things come to the public's knowledge, they speed up. Because when the government does what it wants to do without informing the people, they can take all day. But when the people become aware of what's being done, it moves quickly. That's where I like to come in and explain to a lot of the veterans the benefits that you actually have that are just countless. How many of you still have a copy of your discharge paper from when you first got out of the military? Mm-hmm. Excellent. Excellent. You would be amazed at how many vets I run into that do not have their discharge papers. They don't have a copy of their original medical records or even service records that they should actually have for some things, especially when you're making claims that I'll get to a little later. But one of the things that I really like to focus on, especially with regard to benefits, is the area here called archives.gov. Have any of you ever visited or heard of that website, archives.gov? That is one of the most powerful elements for military personnel, their families, and dependents possible when it comes to getting copies of your records. Let me give you an example of how a lot of people do it and why it doesn't work the way that they had originally been doing it. If you wanted to get a copy of your medical records from Veterans Affairs, you go on down to the VA office and you fill out about 300 documents, and then you submit it, and then you wait. And then you wait. And then you wait. Then you contact them going, well, I came into the location requesting a copy of X, Y, or Z. And they say, oh, really? Then they go tapping on the screen. Basically, they're not looking for anything. Then they say, we see no record of that. You would have to fill out this form again. Archives.gov eliminates that, because archives.gov does everything that you need to have done, and it creates what I love, which is the best element. It creates an electronic signature request date. That means the date, hour, minute, and second that you made that request is recorded. Now someone's being held accountable, because now they can't say, well, we didn't get a copy of your, because they did, and they're held accountable to it. But on here it says for military records. That's a very broad statement. Those military records that you can request off of archives.gov, your discharge papers, your DD-214, or from World War II, they had discharge papers, which they weren't called 214 until a little bit later, until they converted it. But they would have a copy of that on archives.com, and they get that mailed to you from Department of Defense. You can also get a request for all of your medical records from your entire time in the military, because all of those are kept at archives.com by the federal government. You have free. No, I would request them regardless if you're disabled or not. I'll come back to those with that kind of a question. Reason I strongly recommend getting your medical records, I'll get to in a little bit and later on, because that's a good question. You also have access on there to all of your military records. Everywhere you've been deployed, any assignments that you had been placed at, they send that to you from archives.com. And then one of the ones that they give you from archives that for me is one of my favorites. Every medal that you ever earned while you were in the military. They will replace every one of them at no cost from archives.com. They send you the full-size medal in the case with the ribbon as well for each one of your decorations. I retired from the Army back in 1998. Unfortunately, my wife and I, we had a fire in our home that we lived in up in Upper Darby, Pennsylvania at the time when we retired. So my medal, a lot of my stuff got destroyed. I learned about archives when I was working at Veterans Affairs. Until then, I'd never heard of it. I requested a copy of everything. It took them 40 days, and I got all copies of my medical, my military records, and my medals all replaced at no cost. Archives.gov is one of the best systems of doing anything with regard to veterans. And when you get the opportunity to visit their site, you can't get lost as to where to go with regard to getting veteran material. Because on the site, as soon as you go to archives.gov, the first page that comes up is their, of course, face page. At the top, it has a gigantic button in the center, military and veterans. You click there, it takes you right over, and now everything that you're going to want to need, know, and get from them is on there. Archives.gov is incredible. I also put at the top the VA.gov, because a lot of people, when they go to the VA.gov, they don't really pay attention to it because they have sometimes too much information on there, and you can get lost in there. When I recommend, I say go to VA.gov, click benefits. Now you're getting away from all of the unnecessary, and you're getting to where the reward comes in. Veterans are eligible to receive so many awards. I wouldn't have enough time if I stayed here all day to explain every benefit that you're truly entitled to. They have a particular point on there that in the benefits section, and it says benefits from A to Z, and they are literally going to go from A to Z. When you click it, it has each letter. You click A, there's about 50 items in there that begin with the letter A. Each letter, there are benefits just because you're a veteran or the spouse of a veteran or the widow or widower of a veteran, because the benefits go beyond when that vet passes away. It is countless. And these are references. The other at the bottom I have for veteran services offices. They have them all over the state. They have them in each one of the counties has a VSO, veteran service officer. Whenever you go to do a filing or get a claim done with Veterans Affairs, I strongly recommend that you do not go to Veterans Affairs to get that done. Go to a VSO. Reason? When you go to the Veterans Affairs office, you're going to do everything in paper. Remember how I told you at the beginning how paper disappears when you go to Veterans Affairs and your claim that you know you filed, you didn't file. But when you go to a VSO, they file it electronically. And it gets that stamp on it. Now it has to be answered. They cannot just say they didn't get it. The other thing that comes from the Florida Department of Veterans Affairs is when you get service-connected disabilities. Benefits out the wazoo are available also from the state of Florida when you become service-connected disabled. And I'll get to how you get ready for those a little bit later, because it's not as difficult as it may seem, nor do you have to be in a wheelchair or an invalid or near death. None of those things matter. I myself, I'm retired, and I'm 90% service-connected. Do I look like I'm 90% service connected? No. But the disabilities that I have aren't the ones that are just clearly visible. There's a whole lot of other types of disabilities that you can get rated for. And as I always recommend the vets, if you ever went to sick call, you're eligible for service connected disability. For basic eligibility, and this is something that quite often gets where myths begin. These are the most simplistic. Of course, you have to be discharged from the active military. That part is a given. But one of the ones that a lot of people have the idea of is that in order to receive eligibility from Veterans Affairs, you had to serve in war. That is untrue. You only had to don that uniform and serve your country. Something my father taught me, you had to serve something greater than yourself for a period. And from that, you become eligible for Veterans Affairs and their services. An enormous myth that is always floating around out there is that I earn too much money and I am ineligible for Veterans Affairs. That is a myth. I was explaining when I was sitting out in the lobby that is a huge myth that people believe, that if I earn $100,000, just throwing a number out there, and I own two homes that are worth $300,000 apiece, I'm ineligible for Veterans Affairs because I make or have too much money. That's untrue. What they do have, if you are a high income earner, they have it where it's set that you will have a copay. Similar to if you have Blue Cross, Aetna, or any other health insurance, when you go to see the doctor, you pay $10, $15, $20 when you come to see your provider or whomever the specialist is. But as I get into a little later, there are methodologies where that's going to go away too. Remember those service-connected disabilities? That's the key, and they're not that difficult to obtain. But every one of these are the opportunities to get into getting Veterans Affairs benefits. This one is another that keeps coming up, the dishonorable conditions. Veterans Affairs has two segments within, well, three actually. They have the benefits, they have the medical, and then of course they have the burial. If a veteran comes out and they were dishonorably discharged, at the initial they are ineligible for receiving any benefits from Veterans Affairs. However, under the benefits side, they have a filing that you can do, which is a challenge to that dishonorable discharge, where Veterans Affairs works on that veteran's behalf to get that dishonorable discharge converted. Majority of the time, that dishonorable becomes a general under honorable conditions. That opens you up to every benefit. Most veterans who have been dishonorably discharged, I have known 3 myself personally that I've met since I've become working with VITAS. 2 of them so far, they've all filed, but 2 of them have had their dishonorable overturned and converted to a general and now receiving benefits. But then the bigger piece of it, one of those 2 is now 70% service connected. He spent 20 plus years as a dishonorably discharged vet because he was unaware that he had an opportunity to get that overturned. But we got the filings done. He used a VSO location in Lake County. End result, he's now receiving benefits he'd never gotten before. And a lot of his cost of living and things of that nature are now being met by having a provider that he no longer has to pay for within the Veterans Affairs instead of having to pay a higher price for them on the outside. This is one of the things that I do within VITAS. VITAS itself primarily specializes itself as a hospice company. And everyone knows that a hospice company cares for someone who is in a near-death scenario, case of life, and we come in and we give them care and comfort so that they can have their last years in life or their last times of life will be a comfortable when they can spend with their family. That is a heartbeat of what VITAS Healthcare does. What I do is completely separate from that. Well, I wouldn't say separate, but different. Because my specialty, I do help with the hospice industry because I help with veterans who are on it. But my prime directive is to assist veterans in Lake and Sumter County, whether they are hospice or not. The mass majority of the ones that I help and assist, they're not hospice patients or clients. They're just veterans who are seeking more information like you are here today. That is who I serve. As I mentioned, those are the types of discharges that has to happen. Honorable is what the majority, I would say 90 to 95%, if not higher, get when they get out of the military is an honorable. I retired with honorable, under honorable. Then there's general. And then we come to the ones at the bottom. And these are the ones where the troop did something. You did something that caused it. But just like with a person on the outside, there's always an appeal to overturn a bad decision. Well, that works the same when it comes to a discharge. That's when it comes to making use of those VSO officers and Veterans Affairs to get that thing overturned and present why that was a bad decision made by that organization. Even someone who was discharged with a dishonorable under bad conduct where they were court-martialed. Okay, yes, you did X or Y while you were in the military. But that conviction should have nothing to do with how you served. Because I've known many troops, even when I served in the military, that had been in there almost over 10 years, made an enormous mistake and got court-martialed for it. It could have been misplacing a classified document. That's a serious offense. But you had 9 years of excellent service. Should all of that be eliminated by a mistake? Yes, you did make a mistake. You're going to pay for that. But you shouldn't have to have the entire career you had in the military smeared by that mistake for the rest of your life. Those are the types that file for that appeal to get that thing flipped over and turned into a general under honorable conditions. Remember before I was talking about the separation documents and any of the items that come up. This is the greatest thing I would say the greatest thing since sliced bread. Archives.com is the conduit to getting the documentation to prove information that Veterans Affairs may say didn't happen. I'll give you a really good example. For me, one of the injuries that I sustained that was significant was I was an airborne. I served in the 82nd Airborne Division for almost 6 years during my time in service. And the irony to it, my last jump when I was in the 82nd Airborne, before I was going to leave, we had to go out and do it because we were going to be what's called a pay hurt. Because you have to do so many jumps each 3 months to stay on jump status. Well, at that particular time, we were having storms left and right. So all the jumps that we had scheduled were getting canceled. Well, it was coming to the end of a quarter, and we had an entire brigade, which is 3 battalions, that's going to be pay hurts. And you would all have to go back to refresher. You get all stripped from position until you get, and that, they don't have time for that in 80 seconds. So on this particular day, I didn't want to do it because I knew this was going to be my last jump. I was PCSing overseas, so I was like, can you just put my name on there that I'm going to be on the jump and just, I'm not on the jump? Unfortunately, nobody would do it, so we had to go out and do this jump. We went out and it was raining and storming. There was a very low cloud ceiling because it was a storm that day. I jumped out like with everybody else. I was the 8th jumper out of the plane. 8th jumper. When I came through the cloud cover, I didn't see anybody because they should be below me because they went out before me, but I saw nothing. Then I could finally see my parachute because the cloud cover before I couldn't see above. I had a partially deployed parachute, but I couldn't tell my rate of descent because I couldn't see anybody. Well, when I came through the clouds and I saw that, and initially I pulled my reserve because panic comes in. I was like, oh my God. So I pulled my reserve. I was maybe 500 feet above the ground when my reserve chute deployed. I hit the ground hard. Needless to say, I broke both of my legs, fractured my shoulder, and had a concussion. When I got out of the military, this occurred, and this was a fact. I didn't get this injury just by walking down the street. I went to do my first filing with Veterans Affairs, and they said, unsubstantiated. We have no medical records that this ever occurred. What? Are you kidding me? But because I knew about archives.gov, I requested my own copy of my medical records. My own copy of the medical records had the admission, had the statement from the medic that was on the scene, had the hospital record when I got medevaced over. The entire account of what truly occurred was in my record. But for some reason, Veterans Affairs didn't get it. And they were going to base their decision off of it. They could see the injuries and they can see what happened. And they could see by my own testimony what the injuries were. But they didn't believe me. I was making it all up. This all happened somewhere else. But it took archives.gov giving me what actually happened that got that rating declared. These are things that are extraordinarily powerful. Something that is great for this as well is the information on archives.gov can be utilized, if not by the veteran direct, but by their family members. Their spouse, their children can all make that request on your behalf if their veteran is incapable. And it's done so quickly. Once you get it done, they give you this little, your confirmation code that has been filed. Then they have you print out a form, you have to sign it and fax it in. That's it. It's over. Now it's usually, everything gets to you usually within 30 to 45 days. It's that fast and it's that effective. But these are documents you have to have before you can do anything in Veterans Affairs. You have to have your discharge papers. These are the ones that they have listed. And of course, if the veteran's married, they need a copy of that. And needless to say, if there's a death certificate and there's something's going to be getting filed by the widow or widower or one of the family members, that they would need to get a copy of that to Veterans Affairs as well, because these are supporting documents. Now, of course, your marriage license and death certificate is not going to be kept at archive.gov because that's personal. That's not something that the military has, unless the vet died in combat. Then it is. But if it's something that occurred at the civilian time, that's not going to be listed on there. But everything else, you would be able to pull from archives.gov. This is where we get to what I mentioned before, the service-connected disabilities. Service-connected disabilities are not always something where you had to have served in combat. Service-connected disabilities are anything that occurred while you were in service. See, a lot of people think that service-connected means it's combat-related. No. You could have been working in the mess hall, and on that one particular day, you were making soup. Some of the soup got on the floor, you slipped. You broke your arm. That is a service-connected disability. You could have been in the infantry and you were doing road marches out the wazoo. I remember doing that kind of stuff. Your feet hurt. You go see a medic because you have a blister. Guess what? That's a service-connected disability. If you carried a rucksack and then later in life your back hurts, guess what? That too is a service-connected disability. That's why I always tell vets, if you ever went on sick call, that is a service-connected disability. I went to the military. I didn't know I was allergic to bees. One, I'd never been stung by a bee, so as far as I was concerned, I'm not allergic to them. I got into the military. Needless to say, on one field expedition, I got stung. I learned at that point I'm allergic to bees. Being allergic to bees is a service-connected disability. I didn't even know that. I mean, I was that way before I got there, but I didn't know that I was, until I got stung, I didn't know. But it occurred while I was in the military. That's the first recorded occurrence of it. That became a service-connected disability. If it's a female, as an example, she goes into the military and she's married or not married and she gets pregnant, has a child, and something happens to the uterus. Guess what? That too is a service-connected disability because it occurred while you were in the military. If you stumped your toe, got a fingernail popped off, if you got a splinter, I don't care what it was, if it occurred while you were in the military, it is a service-connected disability. Then there's another methodology. Let's say it's not in your medical record. There is nothing that really shows that whatever the injury or illness was, that it truly occurred. We don't have any record of it in your military record. You can get what's done is a sworn affidavit from anyone that you know who was in the military with you at that particular period of time, even if it's your spouse. My wife signed an affidavit with regard to my knee injury when I was in there because about how I felt about it. I didn't really want to go on that jump because I was just nervous about it because I had this feeling that for some reason, the last jump you do in the 82nd is always the worst jump that you're ever going to have. Some say it's a myth, but it's a myth that tends to come into actual fruition. And I learned it from myself. But she gave a statement that I was fine and great health and everything was fine. But then on that particular day, I was hospitalized. So not only did I have my medical record, but my wife and I had a couple of other people that I served with also gave that statement to even give it even more support because I wanted to do a filing that they have at Veterans Affairs now when you're going for a service-connected that is a rushed filing. This type of filing gets done when you have an overwhelming amount of information that's going to prove your point, and they can make that determination in less than 30 days. You won't have to come in to get an evaluation, and then they'll make that immediate determination. I recommend that to veterans when you've got so much evidence, be it medical records, testimonials, photographs, whatever. Get a rush decision. Majority of vets that make those types of files get their disability rating that goes up. Remember earlier when I was talking about how if you're a high income earner, you have a copay that they would have you pay. It's like $15, $20 per visit. When you have a service-connected disability above 30%, you don't pay copay anymore. And you have access to everything at Veterans Affairs except dental. To get dental, you had to have a dental service-connected disability or get rated 100%. 100%, you get everything and a ball of wax from Veterans Affairs and from the state of Florida. But getting rated is for anything that occurred. Anything. Keyword is anything. From the last standing, this is the standard monthly rate that they would send you for the rest of your life. Now, this is where these percentages are without any of the other add-ins that get put into that service-connected disability. This is your standard rate with no dependents. Now, if you're married, there is an additional amount that gets added to it. If you have children or grandchildren that reside with you, there is an additional amount that gets added to it. If your service-connected disability is something that inhibits you in certain ways, a certain amount gets added to it. For me, with my knees, my lower back, and my shoulder, those are things that limit me. So I don't do a whole lot of heavy walking too often. I usually walk with a cane the majority of the time, but today I felt really good and I left it out there in the hallway. But if I get to where it's going to start to hurt, then I will gladly, have my associate Chris, who's in the back, go and get it for me, and I'll make use of it. But for the most part, I walk with an assist device item, so that's an add-on to my service connection. The other portions that get added, there's countless things that can get added to it, but I always like to show what the base flat line is for those service-connected disabilities. And again, this is for the rest of your life. And this is a tax-exempt income because it's based on disability. It's not retirement. So this is a disability-based income. The other benefits in the state of Florida that come with regard to when you get any of this is you get a homestead against your property tax, where your property tax is going to come down from 10 to 90%, depends on what county you're in as to how much you're going to get. But whatever the case is, your property tax is going to come down. You just have to make them aware that you're a service-connected veteran. You can get this letter for free from va.gov. You go in, I'm sorry, not va.gov, but your records that you can get to off of the archives. And they have a letter that gets pre-populated. You can print it out. Take that one to your particular county property tax location, and then the year, not the year that you're in now. So if you turned it in now, you're not going to get it for 2018. But in 2019, it goes into effect. Your homestead's there forever. Now, when you get to this jolly number of 100%, you will never pay property tax in the state of Florida again. You will not pay, well, for any of them, you will not pay for your hunting or fishing license. For any of them, you will also get access to all of the state parks in the state of Florida at no cost forever. You also get, when you're rated with any of these percentages from the federal level to national parks, you get an access for life to all national parks at no, well, it is one cost. They charge you $7.50 to mail you that permit. And then that's it for the rest of your life. These are some of just a handful of the benefits that this provides you everywhere in this state. Florida is one of the most veteran-friendly states in the country, and I love it, which is one of the reasons my wife and I and our family chose to retire down here, which I couldn't stay in retirement. That's why I do what I do now. But these benefits are priceless to where it assists veterans and their family members. And I'm not certain if you've ever experienced, whenever you go to Home Depot or Lowe's, they give you 10% off just by being a vet. Then there's a lot of restaurants and stores that give you percentages off just by virtue of the fact that you're a veteran. One of the things that I love is every year, if you go to the va.gov, or if you go to one of the veterans locations, even the CBOCs, which are the small clinics in the communities, every year coming around Veterans Day, which is next month, they have a listing of locations that give a lot of stuff away free on Veterans Day. One of the ones that for me that I love, my family always makes use of it, is, I can't believe I just forgot the name of the restaurant. It's where you go in, you pay like $7 and you can eat everything that's in there. Golden Corral. For veterans, their spouse, and whatever children you bring with them or grandchildren you bring with you, they get to eat free on Veterans Day. All you have to show is proof of being a veteran, which is like your VA card or military ID. And then that's it. But there's countless restaurants that do the exact same thing. For me, I always tell my wife, Veterans Day, yes, I'm going to celebrate the fact that I'm a vet, but I'm going to go out there and let me get my list. Subway gives a free footlong. So I'm going to go to that one. Then I'm going to go over to this one. I'm going to get another one. And I want to go over here and get the free soda. Because I always look at it, I serve my country. Now I want to get a little kickback at least one day a year. But these are just a small sampling of the benefits that you have available to you right now. These are three of the ones that come into hand, and these also work with what we do with the hospice as well. But these are just assistance as well. One of the ones that I really like is the Veteran Community Living Center facilities. Before I retired, they opened up the Lake Nona location that's over near the airport, which is where the VA hospital is, and they have a community living center that's on site there. It filled up quite swiftly with vets moving into there. And I still go out there at least once to twice a month on the weekends just to go out and serve the vets and their families that are in there. That's one of the things that for me is one of the more pristine benefits that I love for vets. Because for those that don't have the ability to own their own homes, or they're destitute for whatever the reason may be, they have something that's there for them. And that's something that I really think that's great, because these, the ones that are living there, have medical needs and concerns, and they get to reside there and be treated. One of the other are the veteran state homes that exists. There's a community that's in Umatilla that I just learned about, that I went down and visited, that's a community that's being built to support veterans who are incapable of taking care of themselves, where these vets get homes. And there's a whole community with benefits similar to any other HOA kind of community that you live within, but it's being designed just for disabled veterans and their families. That's something that I find that is incredible. And I really work hard to get myself behind that, because being a vet is to help a vet. And whenever I find ones who are down or need assistance, I always like to make sure I get the opportunity to plug them in to this kind of information and how to make use of it. All of this is on the va.gov. And I always tell people, go to benefits first. That's where the deep well of information lies for what's going to benefit you. The community nursing home program is another that's interesting. That is incredible. And that's where the nurses come to the residence of veterans when they can't make it out to the locations. That's such an incredible benefit that is priceless in how it operates. Because what it does is it brings the health care to you. They have telemedicine that's also available, which is another great benefit. When you can't make it to the doctor virtually is coming to you, where they can sit and speak to you via conference on television, where they can sit and speak with you. In most communities, especially retirement communities, they tend to have either a medical or nursing staff that's on location where they can be there, which is even better then, because now you have a nurse that's on site. The doctor's talking to both of you, then the nurse can check movement or whatever the problem may be, and give real live time information to the doctor. Then they can provide the medication online and have it shipped to you. Generally, it gets to you the next day. These are incredible benefits. But one of the things that makes it super priceless is when, like on the screen or two before, when you're service connected, you're not even paying for this anymore. It's being provided to you for a service that you gave to your country. For the nursing home care, you have to be in one of these conditions to receive that particular type of treatment. But generally, for those that need it, their doctors are going to recommend it for them. So it's not something that you have to go through 8 levels of red tape and fill out 250 forms to get it, because it's something that's going to get identified by their healthcare provider, be it from Veterans Affairs or from an outside provider submitting it to Veterans Affairs. So this comes very quickly when the situation or need for it arises. Same with nursing home care. It works on the exact same program. In order to get it, your healthcare provider is the one that's going to be the conduit to get that done. But see, the biggest piece is the majority of the outside medical practitioners may not know about this. That's why I find it very critical to make sure that the veterans know that these types of programs exist. So it's an addition to the medical treatment that you're already getting, but it's going to be provided to you at no cost. I can't say that enough. At no cost. Now, to get the nursing home, you have to be 60% or more for the nursing home portion. But the majority of the time, that's 60%, although it sounds like a big number, it's not. Would you realize that getting what they call the ringing in the ear, that's 30%. Ringing in the ear. Do your knees hurt? Knees can be 20%. Your feet hurt? You can get rated for the most minuscule things, but they add up. And the more things you file and claim for, and as time goes along, that percentage goes up. Yes?
Does that also apply for spouses if they receive the nursing home care?
If the veteran meets that percentage mark. Whatever benefit the veteran gets, the spouse is eligible to receive that as well. So it carries over. One of the bigger ones that I'll get to in a little bit, it's one of my favorite of the benefits. It's called indemnity. If I get ready to skip over this, somebody just yell indemnity, and I'll bring it back up, because that is a super benefit for the surviving spouses of military vets. With the home health program, this one works. This is where they send the nurse and practitioners out to the home. What they have here, which is a good one, you can't double dip. Double dipping is when you try and make use of VA, Medicare, Medicaid, and us to pay for the same thing all at one time. That's called fraud. Then you will get to meet the Department of Justice, and we don't want to go down that road. But these are where the persons are going to come to your home to help take care of you, that being the home health care team. You're not going to get the MD to come out there, but the MD will come to you via teleconference. But you'll get the nurses, the home health aides. They will be coming right out to give the services that are required. This one is a really nice one as well. Remember before I was showing you the service-connected disability? That's when you get rated for injuries. This one is given to veterans and this one, you have to fall into every one of these categories in order to get it. But this is an incredible feature, because what this one is, it's a pension. It's like a retirement amount coming to you in addition to your service-connected disability. But it's designed for those who are in need. It says low incomes, but the income base is based upon a scale that they utilize, based on income, where you live, the cost of your living where you are. There's a huge amount of factors that go into it. I always recommend to the vets, If you think that you may fall into that, or if income is a concern, speak to your doctor and the benefits side at Veterans Affairs and begin making a claim for this to get done. Because this is such an incredible benefit. One of the things that sometimes gets people confused is it says that 1 day of service must have been during a defined war period. A war period doesn't mean that you yourself have to be on the combat ground itself. A war period is right now. We're still in Afghanistan. So anyone who's in the military is during a war period. As long as we have a deployment in effect, that is a war period. If during World War II was going on as an example, but you never yourself saw time in Europe, Japan, or anywhere, you were stuck at, Fort Bucket, wherever, and you never left that post, you were still serving during a wartime. That is what has to happen. Now, as I always tell people, very seldom is there a period in U.S. history where we're not doing something somewhere. And as long as for 1 day you were in military doing that, you would qualify for that portion. But these are incredible benefits that go to assist veterans who are truly in need. This is the amount that pension would be in addition to their service-connected disability. These amounts, as you can see, are, although they seem like they're not that much, but imagine for the person who has nothing coming in and they had no service-connected rate, but all of a sudden now they're receiving, $1,500 a month, and then from here they're receiving about another $1,200 a month. They just went from nothing to like $2,500, $2,600 a month. They went from nothing to almost $30,000 a year. That's like going from broke to being a millionaire in the mindset of the one that's receiving it, as well as their care. So these are benefits that are just, what I consider priceless for a veteran who is in need. This is the one I mentioned before, the aid and attendance. This is where they're going to have people coming out and assisting with daily activities. One of the things that I've always learned, especially from being a veteran myself, fortunately, I can say that I'm blessed to have, a family around me. Some of the times a vet can have no one. And a lot of the times, someone just being present is one of the best features of that aid and attendance, because there's somebody there. Just conversation, even if it's for 20 minutes, that there is activity with someone from the outside world. A lot of times that's one of the best forms of treatment that a vet could ever receive. Not only is their healthcare needs being met, but their social needs are also being met. And it's giving them the ability, what I consider to be life-extending activities. Sure.
He's not disabled, he gets a pension. Is that a VA pension, or is that VA pension meaning people with disability?
It depends on where the pension is coming from. Where are you receiving it from? That's from the military. That's separate from this one. This is the pension that would be the one that's rated because of low income. From the one that I had a...
I'm just talking VA benefit itself.
Oh, any VA benefit. He's eligible for any of those as long as he served, definitely. But he has to file for it. No.
I just want to make sure, because it seems like it's the same thing. Right?
Yeah. But these are the ones that would be for the aid and attendance in the event that they need that particular type of service. This is when they need regular aid and attendance. This is one of the ones that's where they will receive an additional amount added to the feature that they're going to receive. When they have no dependents, it's $1,758. If they have one dependent, it's $2,085. They only go by one. If you have 5 dependents, it doesn't matter for this particular one. They're only going to give you one. Yes, sir.
We have several assisted living places around this area.
Yes, sir.
And I'm interested in knowing what kind of benefits we get if we go into assisted living. My wife is 89 years old. She needs assistance, and we're thinking about that. So I'm here to find out what kind of assistance we can get from the veterans. I can get something.
Yes, you can. That benefits and services that assist the ALFs, you have to utilize, as again, I go back to using a VSO. Do not do that just by straight paper. Use a Veteran Service Office. And you have one that's in Tavares. They have several reps that are in there, and they will assist you in getting the documentations and the information that you need for that particular type of service, and how One of the really cool things is a lot of the ALF areas, they have a lot of the documentation in there that you would need to make a filing for that. But I always believe, and I always recommend to the vets, if you're going to make use of that service, go get the knowledge before you go into that arena. So that way, when you come in there, you've already pre-filed so that you can have it in hand. When you show up, let's say you want to go to, the ABC ALF location or Brookdale, 'cause that's one of the ones that I know that's a really nice one down in Claremont. You want to go there.
Where do you go in, Bart?
It's the Veterans Service Office. I wish I had the address right off the top of my head, but you can't miss it because it's a nice building. If you go online or if you just Google, is this Lake or Sumter County? You're in Lake, good. You can just Google the Lake County Veterans Service Office, and it'll give you the address and the context. Mark Godinez is the supervising one there. I always recommend him because I used it. I can see Chris is back there getting information for me as we speak. Excellent. Because when you go in there, you call in, you make an appointment. When you come in, they're going to help you get everything that you're looking for. And they are very diligent. Sure.
Is it 402 West Oxford Street, Bavaria, Suite C?
They have the phone number on there as well?
Yes. 352-742-6586.
And what was the name of the street again?
Alfred.
Alfred, Alfred. Suite C. They have a huge sign out front of it. When you
742-6586.
Yes, 742-6586.
They are very helpful.
And the street.
Alfred Street. ALFRED.
And again, I always highly recommend Mark Godinez. He's one of the senior VSOs in there. Very good at what he does. Some of the times he can get backlogged because I always recommend him because he's just so good at what he does. And I have firsthand knowledge of it. That's the only reason I can say that I know he's that good. Because he's really good at what he does at helping vets get the information and benefits filed that they're eligible to receive. Definitely.
Is there a problem crossing county?
No, it's not.
Because the one he's supposed to go to is Marion County.
Correct. You can use any of them.
The VA clinic there, they don't make any appointments. You have to start out early in the morning. And that is so not practical.
No, it is not. That leads me, I was going to mention this one later. One of the things that occurred in the past couple of months by our President Trump, he had signed a VA provision that allows veterans the ability to have personal choice. If the location that you're choosing, that you are choosing to utilize, fits into one of two categories, you're eligible to make a personal choice towards using an outside physician. The first choice is it's too far. Whereas, an example for me, I have to drive all the way to Lake Nona, which from Claremont is close to an hour. That's a trek. And with what my job is, that would get in the way. So that's one eligibility. Or two, the appointment dates are too far away. That's the second option that allows you to have a personal choice. That comes into effect to be useful, at least for me, with regard to specialty care. One of the things that I always have to go in consistently, it's every 6 months I go and I get, as an example, a Botox injection. No, and it's not to keep my face young so I can look like I'm in my 20s. That's not the purpose of it. Mine are for severe migraines. And my migraines stem from a gunshot injury that caused partial blindness in my left eye. But you couldn't tell that I'm blind in my left eye. But I am. But because of that, I get consistent migraine headaches. And the medication that I was taking for it was near useless. So I would have to go out and see the neurologist, and they would give me injections all across the forehead, the back of my neck to care for that. Back in April, as an example, I had an appointment that was set, but because of where I work now at Vitas, the particular day that they had it scheduled for was, I just couldn't do it because I was going to go and see a lot of vets. So I called in to reschedule. They told me on the phone, they said, well, we can reschedule that one for you. Next available date is in January 2019. At the time, I had no choice. That was my only option. But after I learned about, because I always watch the news and I always get my updates on Veterans Affairs so that I can keep the vets in the community aware of these things. I called back in, and this was back in, it was early September. I called in, I need to change my date for my Botox injections. And they said, okay, well, the next available one, they have you scheduled for January. The next one's not available until almost March. I need to get a referral to an outside neurologist because those dates are just too far away. And now I went to go and see an outside neurologist, and I use my VA insurance card to pay for it, my VA ID card to pay for it. That is a benefit that's available to you. But remember how I mentioned at the beginning, if you have a benefit and you don't know about it, then you don't have it. This is why this type of information is priceless to veterans. Because if they don't know, then they're not going to get it, nor will they receive it. This is one of the greatest things. I think that is just incredible, because it really assists people who are with Medicaid, Medicare eligibility. This information work gives you what they have, the new 5-year look back. Have any of you heard of the 5-year look back? Excellent. VA works in conjunction with that with regard to not only Medicaid, Medicare, but also Veterans Affairs medical as well. This is what I consider the trifecta benefit that to assist veterans that are in this phase of life. When I become eligible for Medicaid, Medicare, I actually got a few more years. As I keep ticking up the age ladder, as I tell people, I'm going to make use of that benefit as well, because there are so many things with regard to getting aid and attendance and assistance that really needs to be, I think, perfected so that you don't have so many people being left out that are eligible to receive aid and attendance and or any other benefit and services. So this is one that Veterans Affairs is strongly behind, which I think is a great mover for veterans. And this is something that they are starting to mail out to the vets as well. I've received a couple of their letters regarding it. So if you haven't, always go back to the VA. I can't press it any much harder, va.gov, and go to benefits, because there are so many updates that they have on there that they keep refreshing. And a lot of people just don't go there and see it. I go there because, one, it's my job, but two, I have an interest in it as well. This is another that a lot of people don't know the full-blown mechanism as to how it works. One of the things I always tell people, my wife and I, we had a conversation, if you will. That sounds like a good way to describe it, as to where we would be buried when that time comes. Because a lot of the things that I had done when I was in the military, I am eligible for burial in Arlington Cemetery. Now, for me, that's a big thing, because you have to meet a whole lot of criteria for Arlington now. And I meet those criteria with some of the things that I'd done while I was in service. But she doesn't want to have to go and visit my grave all the way in Arlington because we live in Florida. She was like, well, we can just go to Bushnell. I was like, I know we do have Bushnell here, but I want to be buried in Arlington. So we kind of came to an agreement. And was like, okay, here's the deal. If I pass before you, I'm in Bushnell. If you pass before me, we're going to Arlington. She was like, okay, we can agree on that one. And I was like, there we go. Now we have an agreement. But the burial and memorial benefits are something that's priceless. And it relates to all the veteran spouses and their dependent children. They can all be buried at the site where that veteran would be chosen. If they chose, as an example, Bushnell, they would all be buried in the area right beside each other. And the veteran does not have to pass away before the spouse. Remember, I just said if she passes away first, we're going to Arlington. Woohoo! But in either case, she would be buried there before me, and then I would be buried right beside her. Aha! Only if she goes first. Only if she goes first. Otherwise, we're in Bushnell. But this is a benefit that meets for the family. It's an incredible one, and a lot of people don't realize what that benefit is. Now, it covers the burial and the headstone. It does not cover the funeral. Funeral is at the cost of the family. One way of that being covered is if you're going to get buried in Arlington type, because then the military is going to take care of the funeral arrangements. But if you're going to get buried at Bushnell or any of the other facilities, the funeral part is going to be done by a funeral company on the outside. That is at your cost. You can be reimbursed for a portion, but that depends on what the service-connected disability is of the veteran that passed away. Because based on that percentage can determine how much they're going to actually reimburse you. This is what is covered by when you get buried in a national cemetery. Every one of those is given at no cost to the family. One of the things that is costly on the outside world if you have to pay for it yourself. That grave site, that grave liner, and that headstone, those are expensive. So those are costs that are just going to go away. Something that's also given to you, I believe I have a slide for it that comes up, is, well, if you're doing the private ceremony, then all they're going to give you is the headstone marker or medallion and military funeral honors, but they're not going to cover the burial in that one because you chose a private cemetery. Usually, families that choose a private cemetery, they've already paid for it anyway, but they want the military honors when it comes to it. And in this one, they only do it for the veteran exclusively, not for the spouse and family members. I guess I didn't put it on there, but one of the ways, the others that's done is cremation. Cremation is, of course, far more cost effective, and they can place the urn inside a facility at the national cemeteries with the seal placed upon there, honoring them in their service, and that is also available for the military member, their spouse, and dependent children. This is the reimbursement of burial expenses. This is when it comes into where I always say before, they don't pay you for the funeral portions, but the burial cost, not only is it covered by it, but you can receive $2,000 from them if the cause of death was service connected. Now, a lot of people would think, well, how is that? Well, of course, that would be determined by the doctor when they do the death certificate as to what the cause of death was. And you had to be rated for something. But if that veteran is rated at 100%, it doesn't matter what the cause of death was. It automatically qualifies for the $2,000 right off the bat. Same time, and if they were hospitalized at a VA facility, then an additional $700 is added to that, regardless of service connection. And then there's a whole litany of things that can be for that third one, for the $700 plot allowance. The list is too extensive for me to even try to go down the different criteria that would matter for that one. It's extremely extensive, which means there's high probability of it being applicable. Then also that the discharge, which was from the hospital, had to be due to a service connected. Again, if they were 100%, it doesn't matter. Or they were receiving a pension compensation from the VA, which means they had low income and they were receiving that secondary pension. Then the last one, of course, is if the death occurred under VA care. If that person, the veteran who passed away, was seeing a primary care provider at Veterans Affairs, then that portion actually qualifies as well. See, for each one of those, it's each one. It's not that you have to meet all of them. You have to meet some of them to get what those particular monetary amounts are. This is where we come to, I did put it on here, this is great. DIC, that's Dependent Indemnity Coverage. That is one of the most powerful benefits that VA has. And it works in conjunction with the VA death pension. The death pension is based upon when the income of that family was low, so that pension continues. But the indemnity is when a veteran passes away and a service-connected disability was the cause. But if they were 100%, it doesn't matter. Then the amount that they were receiving from that pay chart, remember that I showed you earlier with the 10, 20, 30, 40, all the way to 100%? That amount continues to the widow or widower for the rest of their life, as long as they do not remarry. If they remarry, it stops. If they remarry and then divorce, then it starts back over again. But as long as they don't remarry, that indemnity continues to be received. Another feature of it is if the spouse happens to predecease the veteran and they have children, even if they are adult up to the age of 26, they will continue to receive it until they reach the age of 26. There are also provisions that allow for dependent grandchildren to continue to receive that indemnity if the grandparent was the primary care custody holder of that child. So in a sense, it is a financial safety net, as I like to call it, over the family, based upon the service that member of the military gave to their country. Their family is being provided for. How many of you have heard of indemnity from Veterans Affairs? That's common because they never talk about it. A lot of people don't talk about the indemnity clause because it sounds like it's something negative that doesn't need to be brought up to the public's mindset or to their attention. I believe that it does. One of the things about death, and sometimes that's a very sensitive and can be painful thing, but Unfortunately, it is a reality for everyone, regardless of their age. At some point, you are going to meet that mark in life. There are provisions that can come to assist. Some of the other provisions that can happen, if the spouse that's surviving is any of those categories, it's going to be continued as well. And the amount that's maximum, and this is with regard to the pension portion, is the $1130. The indemnity is whatever that service-connected disability was. Yes, ma'am.
But this is depending on how much, it's not automatic. I mean, you get on a waiting list or something.
No.
No?
Once that veteran passes away, the termination has to be made from whomever the doctor was that made the pronouncement of death. Whatever the cause of death was, then that death certificate gets sent to, it has to be sent into Veterans Affairs. Then indemnity moves into effect. But most people don't file for it because they don't know about it. So it'll go there, they're eligible for it, but they never sign off on the document to receive it. Now, that's a document you can't get until that vet passes away. But that's why I make it so profoundly, as soon as I understand that when their spouse passes away, that's going to be painful and it's going to hurt inside. I know I'll be that way as an example. When my wife at some point will pass, it's going to be devastating to me. And I'm not thinking the day she passes, let me go down there and sign off an indemnity and make sure I get money. No, that's not going to be in my thought process. No, if they could be rated at 10%. Let's say they rated for 10% because breathing difficulties or whatever, pick an injury, it doesn't really matter. But that is that breathing disorder led to COPD, which then became the cause of death. Now that 10%, because that's all he was rated for, was he had difficulty breathing, that 10% continues on to the spouse until they, of course, pass away or they remarry. But this is, I always look at it as a secondary life insurance policy, because this one will continue to be deposited into the account for the remainder of that spouse's life. It's a protection. And as I always look at it, when you serve your country, in time, your country should then serve you. Because a lot of the times you give up a lot more than a lot of people realize. I remember a quote, although it was from a fictional movie, Rambo is the second one. And the colonel came up to Rambo and goes, they'll probably give you a Congressional Medal of Honor for this. He was like, I don't really care about the medal. He was like, so what is it that you want? And he said that he would have given his life for his country. And he says, so what is it that you really want? I want my country to love me as much as I love it. That hit me inside. I was in the military at that point. And that was a powerful statement, because I love my country then like I do now. So much that I would go back in the military today if they would let me back in there and serve my country again. That's how much I love it. I would do anything to defend it. At the time when I am in need, I would like for my country to defend me too, when I need it. And it's provisions like this that give that to me, because you can be the recipient. Remember, like I said, don't get married again. That messes everything up. Now, if you're retired and like myself, I received TRICARE Prime from the military as my health care, which cost effective. It's the most cost effective, and I can't even really define it. When it was myself and my wife, and we had 3 kids, we have one still at home, we were paying $360 a year for full health coverage. When I learned, I was like, are you kidding me? I'll pay for that right now. I was almost paying that much at the job for my own health insurance. And that was like per month. I was like, for a year, that's incredible. But all of these things go into effect if the veteran passes away. And all the provisions and benefits that they were receiving, they continue to receive, as long as they don't get remarried. Remember the other one I told you where you get the letter from Veterans Affairs, if you want to take it to get your property? ebenefits.va.gov is the direct site, but if you go to the benefits page on VA, they'll have that as a link on there. Or you can use it and go directly to it. What they do here, this is where, when you see a VSO, Veteran Service Office, they make use of that same website on your behalf. And they put all the information in there for you, so you can see it. And then you get the date that it was filed, and you see every step that claim is going through. You get, let's say you made a claim today, and the VSO submitted all your documents to support your claim, and you come back a week later because you want to see how it's going, you'll know exactly where that claim is and how it's progressing. It could say being reviewed by medical team. It could say specialist being called in to diagnose information that's on it, but you'll see it. And then when it's determined, long before you get that snail mail that's going to come to you with the determination, you can go to that same website and see where it is, how much it's going to be, how much you're going to get. One of the other benefits to doing claims, it back pays as well, depending on what it is. A lot of the ones that's really prevalent today is for Agent Orange, for those that served in Vietnam. Agent Orange was a major inhibitor for veterans when they were serving in there. Agent Orange back pays. I've seen numerous veterans that did their claiming for that Agent Orange. Their first payment that's received is in the hundreds of thousands of dollars because it's going back to when that stuff began. And then they receive, it's almost all of them that come out of that is 100% rated. And they're getting $3,000, sometimes up to over $4,000 a month for the rest of their life. And it all comes from doing all of these things with a VSO to make sure it's done correctly and thoroughly and submitted efficiently. This is one of the best things that you can do. Now, if you don't go to one of the county ones, they have VSOs in a lot of the veteran service organizations like DAV, VFW, American Legions, Knights of Columbus. They have people certified to do that within theirs as well. Use it. If you can't get to the one at the county, use one of the ones in the VSOs. You don't have to be a member of that VSO to make use of it because they're there to serve veterans. So there's countless amounts of those in both Lake and Sumter County. Make use of them. And all of these report information to the Florida Department of Veterans Affairs. Everything from the Florida, you got to go to the federal first, and then it goes to the state. But the benefits are priceless. Again, these are the references that I have on there. I have Jeff Blum because that was the one that I was in DeLand. I'm going to put Mark Godinez on there next because I'm going to take him off. But this is the information I gave you at the beginning. It's priceless. Make use of that information. Get out there and get the benefits that you've earned because they're yours. And until you claim them, they're just sitting on the table. And I like to thank the vets for everything that they've given. Yes, ma'am. Don't bet you. No, it's okay. I'll come to him next.
I was trying to see if he could get his disability percentage upgraded because he's at 60.
Okay.
But when he came out of service, he had only like 30, and he never pushed for anything. I thought I was told that he has diabetes 2 related to Agent Orange.
Okay.
And I could have sworn they said if he had to go on insulin to come back in and whatnot. And I did, and they said that wouldn't make any difference.
And I take it Veterans Affairs told you that.
VSO. That's why I'm kind of.
It depends on.
VSO, see if you're talking to.
That's why I don't know who the one that you spoke to was. If I would say it this way, in Mark I can trust because he has yet to give me erroneous type information, and he's, like I said, he's helped me as well. From what I have seen, the diet, because I too became a type 2 diabetic, but I didn't have any of the characteristics of it, nor did my lifestyle create it. My type 2 diabetes started because of the gunshot injury. The part of the brain that got damaged is the part that controls the pancreas, the kidney. So because of that, diabetes came into existence.
See, that's what I was trying to fix and
It
say.
is-
He is, getting worse with different things. But they showed me a paper and only these diseases can be related to the Agent Orange. He's not considered Agent Orange.
Okay. Unfortunately, I can't give a medical on that one, but with regard to a claim, as long as it can be tied to something that happened while they were in the military, it can be claimed. Now, even if he wasn't there, if there's a way or something that occurred that caused or triggered it, that's when you have what they call claims that are secondary service connected. Because virtually everything that I have as disabilities all stem from the TBI that I had. Everything comes from there. So that's the primary.
And I'm getting like, you got anything else going on? And I'll tell you, I was a little frustrated with that one because I thought you're supposed to tell me
Correct.
what the heck, he could do.
I would highly recommend, and this is just what I do in my own personals, I prefer to only use VSOs that they themselves served. because otherwise to you it's just a job. But when you find one that is a veteran, they have your interests at heart. And I say the same with regard to even some of the doctors. When you go to see a doctor that them too are a veteran, their position is not the same as someone's who is not. And they give you what it is that you're looking for. For the mass majority of what I've seen with claims and claims on disabilities, as long as it links to something that occurred there, it's a claimable. Yeah. I would use a different VSO. Yes, sir.
Under references there,
Sure.
benefits for veterans book. The VA tells me they don't write it.
You can get it online now. Yeah, they can be downloaded. Correct. Budgetary, they stopped printing them. You know, here's another one that was an annoyance. I used to always get, we had our TRICARE bill broken where they would bill us quarterly. It was like I think they charged you a little bit more, but it's like $115 a quarter. And they would send a bill, then we would send it in. That was like my mental reminder. Then they just stopped sending the bill. And that was just to save money on the millions that they were sending out in the mail. I was like, well, it'd have been nice if you would have told me that, because I went to go and see my doctor and they did my insurance and he said, well, it was denied. What? I've been here for, what are you talking about? Then when I called, they said, well, we didn't receive your payment for the last quarter. I didn't receive a bill for the last quarter. I thought we overpaid. And that's when they told us, I was like, well, we'll pay it now. So of course they reinstated it because it was an oversight. But I was like, are you going to continue? He goes, we will mail them out if you request that we mail it. Well, then guess what? I'm requesting that you continue mailing my bill, because they'll cancel publication printings just for budgetary. Unfortunately, welcome to the federal government. Yes, sir.
Yes, I had a serious accident in the service.
Mm-hmm.
I filed about 25 years ago. And they said that there's nothing they could do. They lost my files because it was burned in the warehouse.
Yes.
Then I went to the DSO yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
He gave me the phone number of a senator from Washington.
Okay. Yes, that is a very good option. You can even do that with an appeal. You can do what's called a congressional appeal, and that's when it's going to go before a Senate or Congress or House committee, and they're going to assist with the filing. Something else that you can have done. This is where the friend affidavit part comes into play. Vets used to do this thing called a buddy letter that they would send in conjunction with a filing. A buddy letter is useless because that's not a legally binding document, nor is it a testimonial type document. But an affidavit signed by a veteran stating that on or about, I mean, of course, anything like for me, this was like back in the 90s. They can't give you the exact day when such and such happened, but they can say on or about this time period. They would say that, Genova Spencer did experience a back injury on a parachute jump. Before that, and then they're just going to give their statement of fact for that particular event. And that is a binding contract, because at the bottom it says, that you're making this statement with the possibility of perjury. But they're not going to mind signing something that they know is a fact. That is a great support document with the filing. If they can't find the records, because yes, there was the burning and the destruction of quite a few documents in DC. And that was even with regard to some of the discharge documents. I think it was for a period in there in 78. And I think, some of the stuff all the way back into the 60s were destroyed. Some of it can be recreated.
Why couldn't they have followed our advice?
They're not going to do that.
And I can do it.
Yes, you can. And I always tell people, it's the same as when you go to see your doctor and you talk about there's an injury that you occurred, this is what happened. They could just as easily contact the doctor that you saw before, but they're not going to do it, because it's your due diligence to make sure that you have X amount of information. Because again, if you don't bring it with you when you come to see them, it doesn't exist. And the VA itself is not going to make any efforts to go and find anything that's going to support you when it comes to a financial, because it's their money they've got to give you. And I always tell people it's kind of like the prosecution defending the defendant. No, the prosecution wants to convict you. They're not going to do anything to help you. They're going to do anything to get you. So when you come in there with a claim against Veterans Affairs, it's best to have as much ammunition as possible to prove your point. And some of the times it doesn't have to be as burdensome as a lot of people think it would be. A lot of times that a sworn affidavit statement is extremely powerful, because that's someone giving a testimony on your behalf, just like they would in a trial. You literally you could go online and just Google an affidavit template, and it'll give you one. And all that it's just gonna, a basic template of one is where it has notary. You just have a notary, and just a notary to sign off on it. And all that they're going to do is it's an attestation. They would say, I, John Doe, residing, I have to give you residence, or you are like residing at such and such street in wherever USA, give testimony under the penalty of perjury that on or about such and such date, Jane Doe experienced A, B, C, and D. I witnessed this, or I saw them after it occurred. And then at the bottom of it, I hereby swear and testify under oath. And then the notary signs off that they saw them sign it. That's sufficient. Then that gets sent in. All they need is a copy. You keep the original and then send in a copy of it to support. These are things that when vets don't know, they don't get. But you would be amazed at the speed that a lot of those claims get filed in when they have that much supporting information to back it up. Because that affidavit is one of the most powerful support documents possible. It's the same as a person going on defense to defend themselves in a trial in court. The biggest thing that they have as an advantage is eyewitness testimony. They come in and say, he wasn't even there. We were over at such and such the whole time. And as a matter of fact, here's a video of us when we were there. Well, now they can't convict you of something that clearly you didn't. Well, the same is with regard to a claim. VA will say, well, that didn't happen. Yes, it did. Here's the record in my records, but person A, B, and C are saying that this did occur, and they saw it. This was me before, and this was me after. During the before and after, that happened. That takes out the argument, and then the vet gets what they deserve, a high rating. Definitely. And for your husband, if he's rated for anything, do a claim and get it higher. Because if it's not rated at its max, an appeal and get it to its max.
Whatever he's got is not going to be expanded anymore.
Here's the other thing that I recommend for anyone that does have a service-connected disability. Go to the VA and request a copy of the decision letter that shows what your service-connected rating was. They have it, and they have to give you one. Look and read that letter. One of the things that I think is the funniest thing possible, in the letter when they give you the rating, I'll give you the one with regard to my TBI. It came back saying that I was rated at 50% for a traumatic brain injury. We would have rated you at 60% if you had this, and this. We would have rated you at 70% if you had this, and this. We would have rated you at 80% if you... So they're telling you... That's where you have to get the one that they have at the VA locate at their release of information. And then they have to print you a copy. And then take that to build your claim to have that rate increased. Because I could all but guarantee whatever you got, however it happened when you were rated initially, by the element of time, it's worse. And compensation should go up. Any other questions from you, ladies and gentlemen? Thank you. I congratulate each one of you, and I'm thankful that you allowed me here today. Thank you very much.
For an Army guy.
Yes. The funny part is my first intent was to go in the Air Force, and I grew up, my father was a pastor, so I'm a preacher's kid, and he always told me to tell the truth, don't lie, always be honest. So I sat down with the Air Force recruiter because I really wanted it. I sat down and I was going on what I really wanted to do. And then he started asking me some of the questions. He said, we came to the question, have you ever used an illegal drug or narcotic? And I was like, well, once I did have marijuana. It was a couple of years ago, but never since then. He was like, you are permanently disqualified for entry into the United States Air Force. I was stunned. Army was my second choice. I went and spoke to them as well. Same barrage of information when I was wanted. And then we came to the qualifications statements to get into the Army. Have you ever used an illegal drug or narcotic? And I sat there thinking, my father said to never lie. But this is an occasion where a white lie is a good thing. And I was like, no, I have never had aspirin, a headache, nothing. I'm not getting burnt twice. But Army was definitely a good career for me. Thank you all. Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
I was in there.
He answered the question the correct way. Okay.
As part of that, I took all the first sergeants on the base, put us in a room, security police with us, and made us all smoke marijuana.
See, that's why I couldn't get in.
That was so we could what it was like, what it's made of.
Oh, okay.
But it was funny, wasn't it? You say that.
That's what kept me out of it.
Okay, well, thank you all for coming. I think this was